Praise the Lord. I want to welcome all of you to Victory Apostolic Church for one of our first of many community conversations. This particular event is a combined collaboration between the Victory Community Coalition and our friends Live Free Illinois. And we felt it was really important that we have a conversation about a very important issue that is coming up in our community. If you're on Facebook, you're hearing about the purge. January 1st, they're going to start letting out all of the criminals. There's new legislation that's coming that is going to allow criminals to run free. Police aren't going to be able to arrest criminals anymore. And myself and Dr. Robert Craig, we had a conversation. We felt that needed to be cleared up in our community. This should be the place where our community gets good information and correct information rather than looking to Fox News or CNN or conservative news feeds that tries to give us false information, because what is really at stake is your vote. And that's why we're here today. We understand how many people are registered to vote, first of all. And it's my understanding that someone registered to vote just tonight. Who registered? Who's that person who registered to vote tonight? Someone's going to raise their hand. Oh, there he is. All right. Yep, there he is. All right. We appreciate that. I'm glad to see most hands are up. And this is the great thing. If you are not registered to vote, we have voter registration tables right outside the door. You can come register. You can register to vote today. There is a lot at stake this election, and you're already seeing the propaganda out there. So we want to be properly informed. And so I'm Bryant Warren. I'm the CEO of the Victory Community Coalition. I'm also the Director of Social Justice here at Victory Apostolic Church. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have all the answers. So the great thing is that I have a lot of friends. Victory has friends. So we gave a call to our state rep, Debbie Meyers-Martin, and we said, hey, this is an issue. And, I just wanted to know if she would come, and she started sharing all this information with me. And I'm like, whoa, I need to have a notepad and pen. I'm not ready for this now, but I knew that she would be able to break it down. And she said it in simple terms that even I can understand. So we're grateful to have her here tonight. And she's going to give a presentation. We'll have an opportunity for question and answers. Then after that, we're going to have my other great friend, Dr. Robbie Craig. She's going to come, and she's going to talk about voting and any upcoming legislation that is going to happen here in Illinois. She's an organizer with Illinois Live Free. She's very active here in the community. She's Dr. Robbie Craig, so to you all. So I'm a friend, so I get to call her Doc. But to her, she's Dr. Craig for the rest of you all. So she's going to give up some more information for us. And then, I like practical applications of things. So we have with us Brother Gregory Chambers. He is a policy organizer at Live Free Illinois, and he has a great story. And he used a term with me tonight. I knew what he was saying, but I'm going to let him tell his story. But he has a very interesting story that will give us a little bit information about the Safety Act. So again, I'm happy that you're here. We're hoping that after this you will share the information with others. There are people who are online. We're glad that you're here. Tell your friends. Share this on Facebook with other people as well. But at this time, I want to bring up our friend, Illinois State Representative Debbie Meyers-Martin.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here, and I want to thank the Justice Ministry and Victory Apostolic Church for inviting me to speak to you tonight. I just have to say that you are correct. There is so much information floating around, and some of it is inaccurate, some of it is incorrect, and some of it is just completely untrue. And so it is so important at this time in our lives to have the correct information, because people make life-changing decisions based on the information they receive. And if that information is not right, inaccurate, then you are doing a disservice to yourself, to your families. So I'm very happy to be here and share some of the information I have. Now, this bill, the Safety Act, is House Bill 3653. That legislation is over 650 pages. So I try to be concise in the information I'm going to share tonight, but some of it is very technical, some of it is confusing, but I am going to run through the information that I received from Representative Justin Slaughter, who is the House sponsor, and Senator L.G. Sims, who is the Senate sponsor. But I will say that we are scheduled to go back to Springfield in November, and some of the issues and some of the content of this bill is going to change because there are issues. Some of it needs to be changed because it is, as I said, complex. So while the bill is in place and is scheduled to be effective January 1st of 2023, just be mindful that there could be changes come November because we will be revisiting this bill. So, House Bill 3653, the Safety Act. And the Safety Act stands for safety, accountability, fairness, and equity. So I'm going to tell you what's in the bill, and then we will get to the no cash bail, which is causing a lot of controversy. And then I will tell you about the budget money that has been put into law enforcement to kind of mitigate some of the perceived challenges that this bill will cause. So, this bill creates a more robust statewide certification and decertification system for police officers. It requires the use of body-worn cameras by all police departments. It empowers the Attorney General to conduct pattern or practice investigations. And that's actually when the Attorney General's office can investigate or research practices that police departments are using. They can do that by going on ride-alongs, they can check their statistics. But they never could do that before the Attorney General's office, so this bill allows them to do that. It updates the use of force standards, creates duties to intervene and render aid, and requiring training on racial sensitivity, use of force, de-escalation, mental health, and crisis intervention. It provides for mental health awareness and screenings for officer wellness, requires a predicate offense for resisting arrest offenses to be applicable. And that just means that they are not going to be able to arrest you for resisting arrest unless there is a predicated charge or offense to go with it. Reforms crowd control and arrest techniques, including the banning of chokeholds. Requires the permanent retention of police misconduct records. Requires use of special prosecutor for officer-involved deaths. Removes the sworn affidavit requirement for the filing of police misconduct complaints. Prevents police departments from acquiring and using certain military surplus equipment. Requires police to develop plans to protect vulnerable people present during search warrant raids. It also now allows for anonymous complaints to be filed against police. Before, you couldn't do that and be anonymous. You had to always identify yourself, so that they have made that possible. So it also expands first responder, co-responder deflection programs with funding prioritized for programs in communities impacted by the war on drugs, who have police, community relations issues, and lack of access to mental health and drug treatment. It eliminates cash bail, which we will get into, eliminates cash bail to ensure a fairer pre-trial detention system based on public safety and not wealth. Eliminates license suspensions for unpaid fines and fees due to red light camera and traffic offenses. Modernizes sentencing laws by reforming the habitual criminal penalty enhancement and felony murder statute. Limits short-term commitments for individuals with 4 months or less left on their sentence. It eliminates the mandatory supervised release for Class 3 and 4 felonies unless the Prisoner Review Board determines it is needed after a risk and needs assessment. Increases the Director of the Department of Corrections' discretion to sentence credit and expands awards or credit for completion of educational degrees and programming. Provides services and programming for pregnant incarcerated individuals and requires that medical treatment be provided to them without unreasonable delay. And I will say that that is so good to hear that has been done in the bill, because I actually spoke with someone who had been incarcerated when she was pregnant, and they were not given those types of services as far as medical treatment. Requires that 3 phone calls be provided within 3 hours of arrival, and I know that's going away. 3 hours of arrival at a police station and before questioning. Increases transparency and accountability by requiring investigation and reporting of deaths in custody. And it ends the practice of prison gerrymandering by requiring that incarcerated individuals be counted as part of their home district and not the district of detention. So in some of the prisons downstate, if the prisoners are in, let's say, Joliet, but they live in Chicago, they would be counted as Joliet population and not where they actually live or hail from. So that's changing. And it expands services for crime victims and supports compensation of crime victims. So I thought that I would just tell you what was in the bill and then talk about what has been touted as being in the bill in a fact check kind of way. So one of the claims is, beginning January 1st, a list of serious offenses become non-detainable. That is not true. Under the current system, people accused of many of the same crimes pay their way out of jail simply by having the money to pay bail. So the key points of that are, under the current system, people who pay bail and get out of jail for the offenses frequently listed, like felony murder, there are, right now, 50 accused murderers awaiting trial in Cook County right now who are walking the streets because they're free on bail. So it was always if you had the money. Claim number 2, on January 1st, thousands of criminals held in jail will have to be released without bail. The only thing that happens on January 1st related to that is judges get to make custody decisions based on public safety evaluation, not on the defendant's access to cash. So the judge can detain anyone they consider to be a risk of public safety. So the no cash bail was designed to keep people who are minor offenses, traffic offenses, who do not have bail money being held in jail because they can't pay the bail. For those serious crimes, the judges will be making those determinations. Next one that I've heard is police will be unable to arrest illegal trespassers. Police have the option of issuing a ticket to some non-violent offenders, but the law is explicit that anyone committing a crime like trespassing with the intent to hurt or steal should be arrested. Police have and always will have every tool at their disposal to keep people safe from someone they believe to be a threat. So one of the examples used is if a person is sleeping outside of a storefront versus a person sneaking around someone else's home at night. Those are both considered trespassing, but the person who's sleeping on the doorstep will get a ticket versus being arrested, whereas if someone is sneaking around your home, then that is considered a much serious offense, and the police have the right to arrest that person and detain that person if they're considered to be a threat to the community. Next claim, if someone comes to my house and refuses to leave, police won't be able to arrest him. Again, not true. If a trespasser defies police orders to leave and is considered by the police to not be a threat or in need of mental health treatment, then they can be arrested and detained. The next claim, criminals will be able to remove their electronic monitoring devices for up to 48 hours at a time and go anywhere they want. The intent of the law was to allow people awaiting trial who pose no risk to the community to go to a doctor's appointment, a job interview, and other important tasks. When police and prosecutors suggested that this could be misinterpreted, it was then decided that the intent and the limit of the amount of movement time can be granted and should be part of the consideration in their permission to remove that monitoring device. The Safety Act was passed in the middle of the night. I know that you've heard this. Passed in the middle of the night without input from Republicans or law enforcement. So the fact of that is, bail reform has been discussed and worked on in the House of Representatives since 2017. And language mirroring the final version has been introduced more than a year before passage. Police, prosecutors, and victims advocates have been involved in discussions throughout the drafting and the implementation, and their input resulted in significant rewrites. Because you may not remember, but this Safety Act was a trailer bill to the original criminal justice reform back in 2019. So, and I know for a fact that many of the suburban police chiefs have been sitting with legislators, providing input, providing advice. They didn't always see eye to eye on every single issue, but they certainly were brought into the process. And one of the things that we have realize is that for years we have been asking for criminal justice reform. We've been asking for corrections to be made, to make laws more equitable, law enforcement more equitable. And finally, because those things weren't occurring in a timely way, is why the Criminal Justice Reform Bill came to the General Assembly. But for years, as I said, back to 2017 is when these discussions started with law enforcement and with advocates. So the next claim, the justice system could be fairer, but the Safety Act goes too far. The truth is, bail reform empowers judges to hold dangerous criminals in jail. It empowers police to do their jobs effectively, and it takes steps to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. And then the final claim that I have, and certainly if you have questions, we can do that. The Safety Act has emboldened criminals and caused a crime surge. And the facts are that the Safety Act has no connection to crime rates. Studies show that violent crime is rising at similar rates, both in states that don't have criminal justice reform, don't have the Safety Act, as same as blue states. The bail reform gives judges more power to keep offenders off the streets. Some of the truth about no cash bail is that it, in fact, does give judges more power to hold dangerous offenders in jail because they're making decisions based on public safety assessment, not simply the defendant's access to cash. So right now, people accused of murder, abuse, and other violent crimes get out of jail simply by having money to pay bail. Under the new system, a judge will decide whether to hold a defendant in jail before trial on a case-by-case basis after conducting public safety evaluation. This is the same system that the federal courts use to make custody decisions. Federal courts do not release defendants on cash bail, but make an evaluation of the effect on public safety. And just as an example of that, the largest court system in Texas also uses the same system, and the number of people being rearrested actually went down. So at every step, legislators have taken legitimate concerns and feedback and made changes accordingly. And I want to offer that to you as well. If you are still uncomfortable with elements of the Safety Act, please reach out to me in my office with any of the suggestions, the recommendations, the concerns that you have, and I will take that back to Springfield because, as I said at the beginning, this bill is going to change. It's going to change because conversations have been going on continually since it was passed at the beginning of the year. So just a comparison. Our current system releases detainees back into the community if they have access to money for bail. It has little regard for the risks they actually pose and treats them as if they are inherently more deserving of freedom than someone who can't pay. In contrast, the new pretrial system distinguishes violent crimes from nonviolent acts and takes sexual harm seriously. Those accused of nonviolent violations can return home without the burden of posting bail, while suspects of forcible felonies, including domestic and sexual violence, will be detained after arrest. They can be held up to 48 hours, providing the state the time to gather information and decide whether or not someone poses a threat to others. So I will say that your concerns are viable, and that's why we want to hear from you. But in reality, this is not going to be like they're opening the jail doors and letting everyone out. Judges are going to have to be, and they're already assessing how that is going to work in terms of the system, but they're going to be even more engaged in assessing the danger that that person will present to the community. And if in fact it is determined that they're a threat to the community, a danger to society, then they will be detained. It's not a free-for-all for everyone. So I'll just tell you that in terms of the budget in public safety, just to make sure that law enforcement has the resources to do what we're asking them to do, body cameras, so I'll just tell you what the budget has included. So in addition to the $250 million for the Re-Imaging Public Safety Act, now that is creating the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention to focus on reducing firearm violence in communities with the highest rate of gun violence. So $250 million went into that program. $124 million will go to support local police and reduce violent crime. This includes, so if you're hearing that they are not given money for their body cams, it's in the budget. It includes funding for body cameras, automatic license plates readers, ballistic testing and forensics, non-lethal equipment to subdue suspects with less risk to life. It also includes funding for mental health screenings for local police departments, funding for co-responder pilot program, and law enforcement retention grants. $48 million is allotted to prevent carjacking, with funding for local safety councils, youth summer jobs programs, Youth Build Illinois, Teen Reach, and Youth Redeploy Illinois, Parents Too Soon, and comprehensive community-based youth services. $12 million set aside, budgeted, would fund programs to help neighbors actively assist in reporting crimes. This includes money for witness protection, a tip line, a pilot program to use Ring cameras to help solve crimes. $70 million is going to domestic violence prevention. $2 million will go towards expanding trauma recovery centers. And let's see. And so, just according to the Illinois Supreme Court Pretrial Implementation Task Force, the new law abolishes cash bail and provides for a presumption in favor of release for misdemeanors, traffic offenses, and other petty offenses, provided a defendant is not deemed to be a risk to the community by the arresting officer. So again, we're asking the arresting officer to be effective in his job and to make that determination. And that's what we all pay them for. That's what we put our faith in, that they are able to assess that and report that when it comes time for whether or not that person will be detained or not. So, I hope that I have kind of addressed many of the things that you've heard. I'm sure not everything. Okay.
Thank you, Representative, for that. We're very appreciative. And also I want to mention our senior pastor, Andrew D. Singleton, who was not here because he is getting some much rest. So he gave me the keys to the place. And so normally pastor would have us out here by 8:30. I got the keys, so we're going to go a little bit later so that we can get all the information in. So if next week I'm parking cars at Lincoln Mall, you all know what happened to me. So we're going to next have up the policy organizer from Live Free Illinois, Gregory Chambers. We're going to get both of our last two speakers in. They're going to be up no more than 10 to 15 minutes apiece, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask some questions, and we'll get out of here at a reasonable time. Brother Chambers.
I have a tendency to want to say good afternoon, but it's beyond afternoon. It's good evening. How are you guys doing? My name is Greg Chambers, and I am a policy organizer for Live Free Illinois. And I'm here. I want to tell you a little bit about my story. I started working at Live Free Illinois about 2 years ago in November of 2020. And that was just about 2 months after my release from custody from the Department of Corrections. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. When I got out of the Department of Corrections, September 22nd, 2020, the next day, I received a phone call from an assistant policy director for one of the criminal justice reform organizations. And she said, "Hi, Greg, how are you doing?" She says, I got your number from a close friend of yours who works in the lieutenant governor's office. And he said it would be okay to call him. And so I said, yeah, absolutely. And she asked me how I was doing. She asked me, how was your transition? And I said, well, it was great. And she said, well, after we got the niceties out the way, she said, I have an ask. And I said, well, what's your ask? And she said, well, remember that bill you wrote while you were confined in the Department of Corrections? I said, yeah, I remember that bill. She said, well, I have a meeting with a state senator to get him to sponsor that legislation. And she said, would you be interested in attending that meeting? 2 days later. I scratched my head. I said, wait a minute. I just got out of the Department of Corrections yesterday, and you're asking me if I want to sit down with a state senator and talk about a piece of legislation that I wrote while I was confined in the Illinois Department of Corrections? I said, absolutely. Yes, I would like to be there. And we had that meeting. And I told the story about why I was compelled to write that. And I want to tell you a little bit about that story. But I want to tell you a little bit more about my story. All right. I'm a former law enforcement officer who fell on some hard times after my brother, 364 days my junior, was killed. Broke my heart. It broke my heart. I fell apart. And I had a bit of a nervous breakdown. And I started drinking, and I started drugging, and I ended up in a hospital bed, suffering. I was in a one-vehicle accident on the Kennedy Expressway, driving. I don't know how fast I was driving, but I got into a fight with a guardrail. The guardrail won. I laid comatose for a week. The doctor said I had a traumatic brain injury. It was a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Type 2 of 2 types of strokes. You have an intercerebral hemorrhage, where 80 to 90% of the people die, and you have a subarachnoid hemorrhage, where about 20% of the people die. Well, I was one of the blessed ones. A long time ago, when I used to tell that story, I said I was one of the fortunate ones. No, I was one of the blessed ones. God saved my life that day. God brought me back. And then, a couple months later, I found myself in handcuffs, going off to the Department of Corrections. And I sat in that cell and I cried. And I said, God, why did you save my life? Why did you spare my life to bring me here? God didn't give me the answer right away. I was a little upset about that. He didn't give me the answer right away. Took some years for me to get that answer. But I met some people. The guy I told you about, who works for the lieutenant governor now, he was in there with me. We sat side by side in the law library working as law clerks for 10 years, doing law work, helping people out. That was part of God's plan. God said, I need you to help my people. Because when I was a police officer, I was a police officer. I bought into the concept of policing. I'm not going to say necessarily corrupt policing, but I'm going to say the culture of policing. The culture of policing that will have some black men shot and killed in the street, that will have some black men strangled to death, who will have some black men in the back of a paddy wagon being tossed around until he dies. That culture. I bought into that culture. And I said, I'm going to go in, I'm going to lock people up and throw away the key. God said, that's not what I want you to do. That's not what I want you to do. I want you to help my brothers and sisters. Now, I'm gonna bring this home because we don't have that much time. And I'm going to say this. I went in there and I met good brothers. I met good brothers who did bad things. Why did they do bad things? I think we, our legislators, need to ask the question and address that question. Why? We're not born bad. Something happens. Something happens. We need to find out what happens. That's where the injustice lies. Not in he committed that crime and we got to lock him up and throw away the key. That's not what happens. I'm going to give you something. I'm going to get a little personal here. I remember a white police officer who worked for the same police department that I worked for committed a cold-blooded homicide. He was white. He came in, and I said, how much time they give you? He said, they gave me this many years. What? He got 1/3 of the time that I got. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to let that go. Anyway, so what happened was I came here, I got with this organization, Live Free. I met some good people who fight the good fight. What we're doing now is we're reforming the criminal justice system. I work with the Illinois Alliance for Reentry and Justice. I work with Rocky, the Restoring Rights and Opportunities Coalition of Illinois. I work with the Fully Free campaign. The Fully Free campaign is a campaign that's funded by Heartland Alliance, but it's run by formerly incarcerated people. All formerly incarcerated. The whole board of directors, which I sit on, are formerly incarcerated people. We are mobilizing 100,000 people across the state. We've been as far south to Cairo, Illinois. We've been as far north to Rockford, Rock Island, Waukegan. We've been to East St. Louis. We've been to Peoria, Champaign, Bloomington, Decatur. We're coming to other places all over the state because we intend to mobilize. We have a bill right now pending, House Bill 4490, the FREE Act. Lakeisha Collins is the chief sponsor. And the FREE Act does this. There's actually a law in the books that says if you have a felony conviction, you cannot serve as executor or administrator of your loved one's estate. So that means if your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your aunt, your husband or your wife wants you to manage their estate when they die because they deem you the best person to do that, they cannot do that merely because you have a criminal record, a conviction on your record. That's insane. Now, that's the executor. The administrator is a situation where there is no will. Then that estate goes into probate, which means a judge has to determine who manages this. The judge cannot appoint you as an administrator to that will, to that estate, if you have a felony conviction. That's insane. So, one more. There is a bill that actually says, not a bill, a law on the books that says that if you have a felony conviction and this church has a bingo game, you cannot attend that bingo game because you have a felony conviction. Now, who's policing that? We know ain't no bingo police, but the law is on the books. You can go to any church anytime and go to a bingo game anytime. You'll be in violation of the law. That law shouldn't be there. That law shouldn't be there. And we're moving to get it off the books. And I know State Representative Debbie Meyers-Martin is signed on to the Fully Free campaign. Thank you. We appreciate you. But that's just one of our things. We have the Fully Free campaign. We have the Free Act. We have a mandatory supervised release campaign that's talking about laws. We have the Clean Slate campaign, which is talking about giving people a second chance, This is a national initiative. 8 states have already signed on, the last 2 being Colorado and California. Governor Newsom just signed into law Clean Slate legislation, which says that if you have a criminal record, an arrest record, or a conviction record, you can have that expunged, you can have it sealed automatically, and after a period of time, if you're not arrested and you don't go back to jail, prison, you can have it expunged after a period of time. And we're working on the legislation. Our chief sponsor now is Representative Jihan Gordon Booth. And we're looking for more people. Bottom line, what we do is we fight in the state to get 60 votes. We need 60 votes in the House. 60 votes in the House, and you get your bill. 30 votes in the Senate, you get your bill. That's why voting is important, because you can't get to these numbers if you don't have representatives like Representative Debbie Meyers-Martin, or representatives like Lakeisha Collins, or representatives like Justin Slaughter. And let me tell you something, and I'm gonna close right here. I was in a meeting with Justin Slaughter about a couple weeks ago, and he came up, he says he was running late for the meeting. He called me. I said, came on the phone, Representative Justin Slaughter. I said, whoa, what are you calling me for? I said, yeah, what's going on? He said, hey, Greg, I'm running late for the meeting. Can you tell everybody I'm running late, and I'm going to do this? And that's what happened. I told everybody he was running late. He finally got there. But my point is this, in closing. I'm a police officer, formerly convicted. I'm a convicted person who is now doing political activism. I like to call it from policing to prison to political activism. And this is what I'm doing. And there's more out there, not just me. She talked about the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention. The man who runs that office, he tells his story. So he wouldn't mind me telling this story. He is a formerly incarcerated person. He's the director of the Firearm Violence Prevention, appointed by the governor. There's more of us out there. We can do this work. We can change lives. We can make a difference. And Live Free is making a difference. Fully Free is making a difference. And Clean Slate Illinois will make a difference. So go to cleanslateillinois.org and sign up. Say, we want to give people a second chance. Thank you.
Brother Chambers, thank you for that testimony and that information. We're going to move on to my good friend, the good Reverend Dr. Robbie Craig is coming from Illinois Live Free. She is an activist in this area. She's also my counterpart, the head of social justice at New Faith across the expressway. So Dr. Craig is going to talk to us about the impact of voting.
Thank you, Reverend Warren. You know, I'm not going to hold you long. What me and Reverend Warren talked about, along with the other pastors, is what's at stake. And it's not just voter registration that is at stake. What we're dealing with are issues, as you've heard, with the Safety Act. And if you look at Greg, you would never look at him as a person who has been formerly incarcerated. That we are keeping people locked out of the system based on how our current justice system works, the way our current legislation works. And so what I do is try to make sure that everybody gets access. We have at the table a QR code that you can scan before you leave here. It's not just to say, I want to do voter registration, it's to verify your registration. I can tell you that I've been doing this for the last couple of weeks, and every week that I've done it, somebody scanned that QR code and found out that their voter information was not where they thought it should be. It's important that you know, but it's also important that you share that information with family, with friends. We had a young man that registered when he came in, but what we learned earlier today at a different meeting is that if we look at the number of college students that are registered to vote, and actually vote is only about 20%. We have a huge population that is out there that needs to be registered to vote. The other thing that we have to think about and talking about what is at stake, when Representative Debbie Meyers-Martin was speaking about the Safety Act, I don't know if you get these newspapers, the South Cook, I've got 4 of them. And as she stated, most of them, they give enough of the truth to get you bought into it, but then you find that the rest of it is untruth. And most people don't take the time to research the information. That is critical, because what they're trying to do is trying to get us disgusted and not go to the polls. Sometimes we get so frustrated, we hear everything on the news, we read these little papers and say, I'm not going to even waste my time. I'm not going to deal with that. But unless we deal with it, that means that we won't have the people that we need to represent us sitting in office. Within our community right now, because of what they've done in terms of, what is it called, where they changed the boundaries of who our elected officials are, we're in a dire race right now with our representatives because of the redistricting, that we have people now that are running against our representatives that can change who we have representing us in Springfield. And we have to understand that is critical. If we can look at the South suburbs, disenfranchisement has been something that we've dealt with for years. We've finally got representatives that are moving the needle in the South suburbs. I go to all the meetings because I'm a trustee within Matteson as well. And to see what they've been able to do, working with the county, working with the governor, and changing the scope of what's happening here in the South suburbs, we do not want that to change. So we need to make sure that everybody is informed and know who's on their ballot. Some of the things that we ask churches to do, I organize churches within the South suburbs. So I work with Victory. I'm a member of New Faith, so of course I work with New Faith. I work for various churches all across the Southland. And we want to make sure that we're doing forums so you can get the information from your representatives to know what they represent, who they stand for, so you'll know what to do when you get to the voting polls. We also have to look at other issues in terms of how do we get our youth involved. Reverend Warren asked me, you got the youth involved at your church? Tell me what you're doing, because I need to get them involved at our church. We all have to work together to see how can we get our youth and our young people involved in this process, because if not, they're our future. So they have to understand this process just like we do. And so I'm not going to hold you tonight. Voting is critical. And so as you do different campaigns, whether or not it's bringing people together socially at your homes, bringing them together at your church, making sure that you get a copy of that QR code is critical, because that's something you can share on your Facebook page. That's something that you can have in your home. Anybody that you engage, you can have them take a copy of that. We want to make sure that they're not only registered, but they're actually voting. And we're looking within this community to do souls to the polls. We have there's only 2 weeks of early voting for this particular election. And so if you look at a Sunday, we have Sunday, October 30th, I believe, and then Sunday, November 6th, that we're trying to come together as churches to make a statement, to let people know that we understand the importance of going to the poll, and our community is going to stand strong and make sure that we have the people that we know that will represent us, the people that we know that understand the Safety Act, that understand that we have people who may have been incarcerated, but they are now re-engaging in society, and they are productive citizens. The last thing that I want to say, that as a trustee, I was at the Illinois Municipal Conference last week, and of course we had a session on the Safety Act. And what was good about that particular session, they had the Lake County State's Attorney give the information about the Safety Act. She was a Republican. Everybody that sat at the table were Republicans. They also had 2 police chiefs, one that was over the whole state, and one was his assistant. One of the first questions that were asked to them about the Safety Act is, what about the statement that we hear on the news every single day that states that there are 102 state's attorneys and 100 of them do not support the bill? And this is what the Republican state's attorney of Lake County stated. And she is the one who is writing some of the revisions that Representative Debbie Meyers-Martin spoke of. She said that we believe in the principle of the bill. We believe that people should not be held in jail because they cannot afford to pay a bail. And in Chicago, people have spent years in Cook County Jail for the mere reason that they could not pay bail. They lost their jobs, they lost their families just for that reason. But she did say, as Representative Martin said, is that there needed to be some changes, some language, some things that were unclear. And she said 100 of us backed the bill. She said it's going back to Springfield in November, and she encouraged every legislator in there, every trustee, every mayor, to talk to their representatives and support the changes that they're going to be presenting in November, because they believe that it should be bail reform because of the way it's stated now. As she stated, it criminalizes people who are poor, and they want to change that. She made other statements that I couldn't have time to share with you right now. They recorded it. I've been looking every day to see when they're posting it on their website so I can have it and share with people so they can hear from what we consider the other side. So it's not that they disagree with the bill in terms of won't sign on to it. They want to make sure that everything, the things that they think that should be changed, are stated in there before it goes to Springfield again in November for everybody to sign on to. And I'm done. Thank you so much.
All right, so we have time for some questions and answers. So Deacon has the mic. Is there anyone who has any questions for any of our 3 speakers, for the representative, for Gregory Chambers, or for Dr. Robbie Craig? Any questions that you may have? All right, so that means you all got it all down packed. There is a test on everything that You heard tonight on the way out the door, and you will be graded, and I will get back to you about your progress. Well, I want to thank all of you all for being here. So I'm only 2 minutes late. So Deacon, make sure you tell Pastor I did my best to keep us on time. I'm really grateful for all of you being out here tonight to have this information. Share with your community. This is on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel as well. Go back and look at it, some of the information, if you didn't understand. Again, Representative Debbie Meyers-Martin has made her office available to answer any questions. I believe you may have some flyers or some information or anything too. So she was going to have that outside for you all and pass that out. She can give those to you as you're headed out the door. And if there's no questions, and also I want to thank my colleagues for being out here, Reverend Dr. Robbie Craig for being out here. And she not only does, I forgot, she is the trustee. She also runs the Southland Pastoral Social Justice Coordination. Anything you can think of, she's doing that. Again, Debbie Meyers-Martin, who's also a great friend of Victory. We really appreciate her. And then I just met this brother. We're going to have you back again, Doc. I see some preacher, and you didn't want to give up this mic. That's when I had to come up and stand behind you. That's your beginning movement of being a preacher. So we appreciate your ministry in advance. Let's stand and have a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you and we praise your holy name for this opportunity to come together as a community. God, to do the work of creating a thriving community, to bring forth to earth the kingdom of God, where everyone has what they need, everyone is treated with justice, that everyone is treated with love and kindness. I'm thank you for every person who is represented here today, every family that is represented. We thank you for the organizations that are here today. We're praying that not only will people hear what the information, but they will act on it, God, that they will share this information, that they will vote, they will encourage their neighbors to vote, God, and we're praying that this information will transform our communities, Lord. We're praying for our political leaders who are here tonight, that you will provide them with guidance, that they will lead with justice, that they will lead with a kind heart, and also considering the least of these, those who have no voice at all in our society, Lord. We pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.